When we hear the word sustainability, we might think of the environment and things such as climate change, Arctic ice melting, glaciers. This is a picture of the Perito Moreno Glacier in Patagonia, Argentina. This is the edge of the glacier where it ends in a lake. This glacier, unusual for glaciers because most of them are retreating. This one is actually advancing, or at least it was 3 years ago when this picture was taken. But what's striking about it, of course, is the size, the beauty, etc. of the glacier. This is another glacier, this one in Iceland. I don't remember the name of it, but here you can really see that a glacier is a river, a flow of ice. It's not static. Now, one of the things that's interesting about glaciers from the point of view of sustainability is that the retreat of glaciers is thought to be a sign, to be indicative of some of the things that are happening with the warming of the earth. If you're interested, you could check out the website and film called Chasing Ice. I will put a link to that on the course Blackboard site. The photographer James Baylog uses time-lapse photography to capture the dramatic changes in glaciers and ice packs as evidence of climate change. You might want to take a look at that stuff. It's quite worth looking at. And the film is actually being shown in Manhattan. If you're interested, I recommend it. It's quite interesting. Environmentalists who focus on the fate of other creatures, polar bears stranded on pieces of ice are classic postcard examples. Obviously they're focusing on other species, not just human beings. In the case of polar bears, the melting summer Arctic ice reduces their hunting range and ultimately their available food. As dramatic as those images were, we don't actually have to go so far afield to think about sustainability in our own everyday lives. This is a picture, the front picture is of the Ipswich River in August of 2005, where it's quite dried up. And the Ipswich River is located in Massachusetts, which we probably think of as a relatively wet and lush area of the United States. The northeast part of the United States does get quite a bit of rain. But this area has dense suburban development. And even if 2005 was a dry summer, the river is as dry as it is, and this is a chronic problem in Ipswich. The river is as dry as it is because of the withdrawal of water to supply the rapid and dense suburbanization of the region, with people in homes that draw a lot of water for lawns, swimming pools, multiple bathrooms, and so on. So the issue here is about whether our use of resources is sustainable. We don't have to think about polar bears and glaciers if we don't want to. We can just think about the resources that we need to sustain the life that we live. So are we using water in such a way that we'll continue to be able to use it to meet our present and future needs for water? What a picture like this suggests is that we might be overshooting, so to speak, the supply of water, and if that's the case, then our use is unsustainable. Also closer to home, we could think about food. Do we eat sustainably? That is, do we eat in such a way that we will continue to be able to meet our present and future food needs? So we could ask, well, what kind of eaters are we? So generally human beings are omnivores, meaning that we eat everything. Omni meaning every. Michael Pollan popularized that term with his book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, some years ago. And he's also written a number of other books, one called In Defense of Food, in which his basic recommendation for eating sustainably is eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. Not too much, well, okay, that makes sense from a health point of view. Overeating and obesity lead to all sorts of health problems, and the same argument could be given perhaps for the other points, food and mostly plants. What does he mean by eat food? Well, as opposed to what? Of course we eat food, right? And why mostly plants? Does he think it's wrong to eat meat? What does this have to do with sustainability? So remember I said an omnivore is a creature that eats, just about anything. Plants, animals, animal products, fish, edible flowers, fungi, mushrooms, for example. So unlike carnivores, which eat only meat, or herbivores, which eat only plants, omnivores eat just about anything. But let's consider the amount of water that's needed to produce a particular kind of food. After all, most of our food is produced through some form of agriculture. Most of us are not. Very few of us are hunter-gatherers. This chart shows the amount of water needed to produce each of the different kinds and amount of food shown on the chart, as well as the cotton t-shirt there on the far right. Cotton, of course, is not a food crop, and we'll come back to the issue of using crops, and specifically food crops, for purposes other than food. The chart exhibits what is known as the concept of embedded or virtual water. That is, the amount of water embedded in the final product is the amount of water that it took to actually produce the product. The concept of embedded water, or embedded energy for that matter, could be used for any product, not just food, as we see with the cotton t-shirt in the chart. So you'll notice that the quarter-pound burger has a very high water use. Beef has an enormous amount of embedded water because industrially grown cattle are fed corn, and corn requires a lot of water. So eating meat, and specifically beef, could be a sustainability question, not just a health issue or a lifestyle preference, because we can ask the question, does growing a lot of cattle use resources sustainably? And of course, there are other resources besides water that go into producing that quarter-pound burger. The production of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, fertilizer, as well as the energy involved in processing and transporting both the supplies, the resources, and the end product. The water chart just measures one dimension. In addition to the resources that go into producing the product, sustainability also looks at the sinks of the product. That is, what waste is produced and what happens to it. Is it recycled, genuinely recycled and reused, or does it become just waste, just pollution? In the industrial production of meat, the animals themselves, in the process of digesting plant matter, produce methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas, by the way, more powerful than carbon dioxide. And of course, the animals also produce animal waste, that is manure, which is another significant source of methane, as well as other air, soil, and water pollutants. According to a report produced by the National Association of Local Boards of Health, factory farms increase asthma in neighboring communities because of the particulate matter and suspended dust that gets into the air. These affect farm workers and people living in surrounding areas. Children are especially susceptible because they take in 20 to 50% more air than adults, making them more susceptible to lung damage. So the simple example of food exhibits two very important types of sustainability issues. How are resources being used, and what wastes are produced, and how are they treated? I want to go back to Pollan's recommendation to where he says, eat food. Here he is suggesting that in general, the less processed a food product is, the better. So it's better, healthier for you as an individual, to eat fruits and vegetables than it is to drink a can of soda, which is the end product of a long process of extracting sugars from corn, processing them to make high fructose corn syrup, and then adding a lot of chemical flavors and water to make the soda. Pollan's point is that soda is not really food. There's no nutritional value in soda. And much processed food is similarly low in nutritional value, especially in comparison to the resources and energy used to produce it. From a sustainability point of view, the soda involves manufacturing processes that use a lot of energy for something that has no nutritional benefit for human beings, and may even be harmful, for example, to the extent that drinking soda may be correlated with obesity and diabetes. Sustainability, then, is not just about consumption and people buying too much stuff or eating too much meat or whatever. It concerns a whole systemic process of extraction of resources, production of goods, and their disposal. This chart just shows, just sticking with water, the difference in the use of water across many different countries, the average use per person per day of water. And that's just one measure of the use of resources in a whole system of resource use, extraction, consumption, production, and waste. The question then is, what is that system and is it sustainable? For those of you who are aspiring engineers, the throughput of resources in the design and manufacture of products, the impact of infrastructure development such as bridges, tunnels, dams, roadways, sewer systems, electronic products, all raise important sustainability issues. Codes of ethics in engineering emphasize as paramount the health and safety of the public, with sustainability as a secondary issue. And perhaps that's as it should be, as my mother always said, safety first. But seriously, engineers and business in general are also in a uniquely powerful position to significantly alter the extraction, use, and throughput of resources, and therefore may have unique responsibilities if we are going to take sustainability seriously as an ethical and social responsibility. Many current discussions about sustainability focus on large-scale environmental issues, such as climate change, widespread pollution, the available global supply of fresh water, potable water, and so on. But what we want to do in this course is also think about sustainability from an ethical point of view. And for that, we also have to look at how we live and work, how our actions and way of life could be characterized as sustainable, and whether we ought to think of sustainability as constituting an ethical imperative, and if so, why. By way of life, I mean both how we live individually or privately, and also how we work and travel, how we consume and produce as a society. In addition, we are also going to try to get a handle on the general concept of sustainability, for it's important to know what sustainability is if it does indeed define some sort of ethical imperative for how we ought to live. And as we'll see during the course, there are a number of different definitions of sustainability out there.